Hey man, welcome back to Man Time. Today's episode, we are taking a look at one of the most significant, I think, pieces of historical equipment that I own. This is an old school 4-belt custom-made bench grinder that is, well, let's take a look at it. Welcome to Man Time. Alright man, well if you're following along with the series on building the mezzanine inside the barndominium, you know that I have plasma cut a bunch of these end caps and butt plates for all of the I-beam that I'm going to be using. Next step is to get these all cleaned up, and cleaned up just basically means getting the rust off of them, getting the corners knocked off, getting any of the sharp spots off of there, so it looks somewhat professional, you know, in the barndominium. Now I've got some with holes in them. That's going to be the butt plates on the bottom, or sill plates I guess you could call them, that's going to attach, you know, the I-beam to the concrete floor. But to do all that, I've got this one tool that makes me just smile every time I get set up to run it. This is probably one of the best purchases that I've ever made. In two things, it is an absolute 100% duty cycle type of machine. It's got this huge single phase, I think it's around an 8 horse or somewhere thereabouts, AC Delco, and it has got I think it's called a repulsion system in it, where you can adjust the speed. It's kind of an AC DC hybrid motor, where it's got a commutator in there, and it's got some brush placement type of things in it, where you can actually adjust the speed on it. Just ingenious design for a motor back in the day, before they had like servo motors and drives and things like that, where you can, you know, vary the frequency. And it's extremely cool. I'm going to get you in here and look at it. But yeah, I wired this thing up and purchased this locally from a guy who was about to sell his house. It was kind of a pre-estate sale type of thing. But it is a 4-belt drive. Everything is greasable and lubable and completely serviceable as far as it goes. And it runs like a top. It's got this huge breaker box on it, and let's just start it up here and get ready to cut some steel. So I don't run this all the time, and what I do is I actually service these belts, basically just rubbing Vaseline on them to get them, you know, rejuvenated. But yeah, get these kind of rejuvenated with some Vaseline. It's got this huge, like 18 grit wheel on it. I've never seen anything so rough in my whole life. But I have done a whole lot of grinding and using this wire wheel here. Of course, when you're using equipment like this, all of the guards are gone, right? This is back when men were men, and and that's why I say this is a one of the most historically significant pieces I have, because you've got open rotating equipment like everywhere, right? But extremely well designed. I'm going to get in here and kind of go over the machine with the camera, you know, so you can get a good look at it. But yeah, just back when men were men, and there wasn't, you know, this much exposed rotating material to grind something. You got the whole thing, and you just kind of had to know, you know, through a on-the-job training type of thing, like do this, don't do that, don't do that. It'll, you know, sling off and hit you if you do it here type of thing. I guess we can go over some of that. You know, that might be important to some people learning on a piece of equipment like this that they've never seen before. I'm guessing this is somewhere around a 40s machine, 30s maybe. But yeah, this is a cast piece here, and it's got bearing caps here and here with brass bushings inside of there that are 100% serviceable with grease zerks coming out there. And then, of course, on the motor, you've got packing around those bushings where you can lube that up also. But yeah, let's get a closer look at it here and then get the steel finished up. Yeah, another thing I'm going to show you here is how I've got my work center efficiently set up for this part of the process. Again, I don't want to have to move or take a step or anything, right? So I've got this table pulled up here right beside the grinder, and I'm just going to be grabbing from here, taking over here, grinding and polishing, and then setting back down on the table without having to move. Got a nice old piece of cardboard to stand on for the ergonomics. But yeah, here is the panel for this thing. And yeah, this is one, it actually does have a safety built in where you can't turn it on with this box open, so that's pretty good. But yeah, this is the cast base of it. And you can see here what I was talking about with the bearing caps, greasable, serviceable. It does have a little chip out of this holder here. It did at some point, yeah, have some work holders on there. But yeah, this one is broken off and unusable at this point. Hard to see with the light this time of year. But yeah, you can see here the 4-belt system. And it is just very robust. I completely took everything apart, including this motor when I first got the thing. But yeah, the repulsion stuff is right inside of this access plate here. You can move those brushes back and forth to adjust the speed on it. Of course, my wiring job in the back there. Missing the pecker head on there. But yeah, I mean, just in accordance with everything this machine is designed to do. It does have a old truck tire, it looks like. But yeah, it has been really professionally done. I mean, I've never seen welds like that. So, I mean, this is back in the day when you got something and you retrofit it and you had a workforce where you could just say, hey, I need this pedestal grinder set up using parts that we have laying around, right? I bought this really nice motor for it, and we've got this old cast base, and I need you to refurb it, design something where we can adapt and put a 4-belt system on there, versus maybe what they had back in the day would have been, you know, that leather belt, single pulley through the middle of the shop type of deal there. So very, very cool. Yeah, so let's go through one of these before I get I've got a respirator I'm going to put on, because getting all of this rust, thrown up in the air is not really good for your lungs. But I'll do one here just to kind of show you the process and where to use the machine, since it's not a little 1-inch window where you can grind stuff, right? But what I'm doing here, I've knocked all the slag off of this plasma cut end. There's just some little kind of chunks and stuff I'm going to clean up. It's not quite perfect all the way around there. There's sharp edges on there, so I'm going to take all that stuff off. Alright, very nice. Then we move over, of course, to the polishing wheel here. don't know if you noticed there, but I was kind of, let me get my stuff off here. So when you're using an old tool like this, you want to work quadrants of the material where the stuff is pulling away from you, right? You don't want to have it up here where it's pushing against you. If this were to slip out of your hands somehow, you wouldn't want it coming back on you and hitting you. That would be, you know, pretty bad. But yeah, that is all cleaned up, like I can touch it and not, you know, cut myself. And all these edges are chamfered. And we are going to be ready then to weld that onto the I-beam once I get that I-beam cut up. That's going to be the next video where I go through and plasma cut the I-beam to length. I'm trying to figure out a system to have a straight cut every single time. I think I've got it pretty well figured out, but make sure to subscribe so you can catch the next video where I'm cutting up all that I-beam and then welding on these butt plates. Anyways, that's going to do it for today. Man time, get out there. Have you some man time too.